Hello everyone, and welcome to another video about self-driving cars and the social nature of traffic. I'm Eric Winkhuizen. I used to work in the self-driving car industry as a social scientist. It was my experience of working with the engineers who were programming our self-driving prototypes that opened my eyes to the enormous gap between driving software and human drivers. The differences are so fundamental that I became convinced that we ought not allow autonomous vehicles to drive on the road without direct human supervision. In other words, when it comes to driving software, it is important to have what technologists call a human in the loop. Having a human in the loop is the norm for most software applications. There are not many truly autonomous systems in the world, especially not when it comes to safety-critical systems. To argue, as the self-driving car industry has done since its inception, that people must be kept out of the loop because people are such terrible drivers just doesn't make any sense. Attentive human drivers rarely make mistakes. Moreover, people that post videos of driving software in action, be it Waymo passengers or Tesla customers using FSD, provide the most compelling evidence, as almost invariably their comments leave little doubt that there are times when they themselves would have driven differently and indeed better than the software. By eliminating humans from the driving loop, the self-driving car industry is pursuing something quite radical and unconventional when it comes to software applications. Given that, you would expect the regulators to monitor the industry very closely. But unfortunately, the regulators in the US have been missing in action. The National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration has simply echoed the self-driving car industry's propaganda about how the technology will enhance safety and let the industry regulate itself mostly, rather than requiring commonsensical safety standards. So it's up to ordinary citizens to sound the alarm about self-driving cars. In this channel, I've taken a critical look at self-driving cars from a social scientific perspective. Driving on public roads is, after all, participating in social life. But robotaxis can't participate in social life because their technology does not operate like people do. Robotaxis can't see what people see. They don't experience time in the way we do. They don't have judgment. They can't interact, and they lack common sense, etc., etc. I will link to my podcast below if you are interested in all the ways in which driving software is inferior to people. I have to admit that I thought that the robotaxi industry would self-implode because inevitably, given the limitations of the technology, there would be accidents that would turn the public against the industry. And indeed, it looked like this might happen when a cruise robotaxi dragged a pedestrian it had hit over the road in San Francisco last year. But to my surprise, the industry has rebounded from that accident. Waymo, the undisputed leader of the industry, has been expanding its robotaxi service to multiple cities, and they have had relatively few issues. Waymo just secured another $5.6 billion in funding. Tesla, meanwhile, has continued to produce updates of its FSD software and recently had a robotaxi event. Musk believes that the FSD is now close to being good enough to drive unsupervised. So despite my argument about the principled limitations of driving software, the industry has made progress. And it could make one wonder whether I was perhaps a little hasty in my arguments against self-driving cars. But I don't think so. So in this video, I will present some instances from videos published since my last podcast to demonstrate that the limitations of the technology still stand. But I will also try to address why we have not seen as many incidents as I anticipated. In my podcast on self-driving car perception, I argued that one of the big differences between human vision and autonomous vehicle perception is that human vision is connected with human understanding of the world. This allows us to see in an instant not just that there are human-shaped objects around us, which is how self-driving cars sees people, but also what those people are doing. This is helpful in many ordinary situations. For instance, here is Kevin, a Waymo tester in a robotaxi in San Francisco.
Oh, and that BMW is reversing. Destination changed to Hop Row Benevolent Association.
Do they have enough room to get in? Oh, no, why are we going forward? Waymo. I wonder if they can even get in. I think they can just barely make it if they're good at parallel parking. And we should really just like back up. Even a meter would help. Come on. Do we really need AGI to understand that this car's trying to park and we should just back up a little bit?
The Waymo has left the car in front that is trying to parallel park with very little room. So the driver has to go back and forth to parallel park. But when the other driver moves forward, the robotaxi rolls forward also, thus making it yet harder for the other driver. Kevin sounds a little exasperated when he says that it should not take AGI to leave space for a car that is trying to parallel park. AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence, which is another way of saying an AI that has common sense. AGI is the ultimate goal of AI, but it has never been achieved. Therefore, the self-driving car industry has proceeded under the supposition that AGI isn't really necessary to drive safely. But this is an instance in which common sense perception would have really helped. Indeed, why we would allow software drivers that don't have common sense on the road is really puzzling, as it would be disqualifying for human drivers. If I had pulled this stunt during my driving test, I would have failed. This example further illustrates why the limitations of AI don't always cause trouble. It is human flexibility. This driver is able to park despite the robotaxi's efforts to make it more difficult. Traffic is a social system that can absorb a lot of poor driving without causing reportable incidents. Another way the computational vision of a robotaxi is different can be seen when it makes errors. In this clip, a Waymo comes to a complicated intersection, and for some reason the robotaxi can't perceive that the light is green.
It's a green for us.
It has stopped in the middle of the pedestrian crossing, but it should really go. Naturally, the cars behind it honk at the Waymo, a good illustration of the social nature of human perception. If you are a member of a social species, others can help you see. Usually they are successful. This is how we all learned to see in the first place, after all. But not a robotaxi. Waymos can honk, something we will look at later, but they can't understand that they are being honked at because they are neither social nor self-aware. So this Waymo ignores the honking and stays put. When the traffic light turns green once more, the perception system is still not jolted out of its error, so the cars behind it end up going around the Waymo, a risky maneuver. Incidents like these will never appear in any driving statistics, which is why these statistics, now so often cited by the industry to argue that their software drivers are safer than human drivers, are such an imperfect measurement of the real impact of self-driving cars on traffic. I have also demonstrated that self-driving cars can't interact. They still can't. Consider this example. The Waymo robotaxi comes to an intersection where it wants to turn right. A pedestrian is standing at the edge of the sidewalk as if they want to cross. The robotaxi starts to make the turn and accelerates, then suddenly appears to change its mind and slows down. Maybe because the Waymo's behavior is a bit erratic, the person takes his hand out of his pocket and waves the robotaxi on before it has stopped. Obviously, the Waymo should now go, but instead it slows down further. Realizing that he has not been understood, the man waves for the robotaxi to go ahead a second time. When it still does not respond, he abandons trying to interact with the robot and turns around, probably frustrated. Ironically, that works. The Waymo now goes. To me, the fact that self-driving cars cannot interact was an absolute deal breaker because people interact on the road whenever there is trouble, a special situation, or miscommunications occur. Interactions are therefore critical for safety. I thought that Robotaxi's inability to interact would cause all kinds of trouble and have been surprised that it has not. But this clip illustrates why I was wrong about this. It's the humans. People approach interactions on the road collaboratively. They make accommodations for others and strive to attain intersubjectivity. And that stance helps robotaxis out, even though they can't interact themselves. Their inability to interact becomes especially obvious when robotaxis encounter each other. There is a Waymo parking lot in San Francisco where robotaxis gather when there are not enough ride-hailing requests. Sophia Tung, a resident of a nearby apartment overlooking the lot, set up a webcam to monitor the activity. Here's a short sample of the video she recorded. Some of the robotaxis are parked, but others are circling the parking lot only to become blocked by vehicles ahead of them. After some time, the Waymos back up to go around the car that's blocking them. That triggers the Waymo behind it to honk at the reversing car, even though they should know that the car is programmed not to hit anything. The result was a parking lot full of robotaxis backing up towards each other and then honking at each other throughout the night, making it hard for the residents around the parking lot to sleep. Ironically, the honking is entirely pointless as the Waymo software lacks the ability to interpret whom a honk is meant for, let alone to adopt its behavior accordingly. Thankfully for the robotaxi industry, there are people around. However, as more and more robotaxis occupy our city streets, the likelihood of them encountering and confusing each other increases, making traffic worse, not better. In another video, I showed that robotaxis lack the ability to exercise judgment. The software can't assess whether its own driving is safe or appropriate, nor evaluate the actions of others. That is a rather crucial limitation when compared to human drivers. Here is a moment when Kevin instructed his Waymo to stop in a post office parking lot. He didn't actually need to visit the post office. He was simply testing the robotaxi and had put a stop here on his route. As soon as it stopped in the parking lot to drop him off, Kevin directed it to the next destination. But the new route planned to leave the post office parking lot through an exit that was closed.
So it wants to go left, but there's a fence right now. So that entrance is, we got the machine gun turn signal as it's indecisive about whether it can drive through the fence.
After determining that it couldn't exit through the closed gate, the Waymo headed back to where it had entered. Everything seemed fine until the algorithm suddenly rerouted back to the closed gate.
Oh, we're gonna go around the parking lot again? Bold move.
And the robotaxi made a circle in the parking lot. In my video on how self-driving cars perceive time, I explained that self-driving cars operate in a world in which they are born again with each new sensor sweep. And this is another example of how that limitation can lead to trouble. This robotaxi does not remember that it can't exit through the gate. A Postal Service employee now approaches the circling robotaxi.
But haven't, Hey. Okay, yeah, I'm just a customer. I don't control it, but yeah, I'll call the customer service. Yeah, I'll have them, yeah.
I can't make out this exact words, but his message is transparent. He wants the robotaxis out of the parking lot. Imagine a human driver who had such an interaction. An exchange like this would immediately and fundamentally change the situation. But to understand that, the human driver would rely on common sense judgment that an autonomous vehicle does not possess. First of all, a human would recognize that this man isn't just another pedestrian, but an employee of the Postal Service and thus someone who represents the organization that owns the parking lot. That, in turn, requires understanding where you are socially, namely in a post office parking lot. That is a sense of where you are that is quite different from just knowing your GPS coordinates and having a map. Furthermore, a human being would be able to interpret the man's movement toward you as a signal that he wants to talk to you, which is another way in which he is different from an ordinary pedestrian. Finally, it would be easy for a human to tell that the man is upset, so it's helpful to be able to understand emotions. All of these things would be obvious to a person. It certainly was to Kevin, who opened his window to talk to the man and now calls Waymo customer service. The Robotaxi, however, is completely and utterly unaware and thus circles the parking lot several more times while Kevin talks to Waymo customer support. It turns out that customer support has only limited capacity to intervene in the Robotaxi's control algorithm. The only thing the customer service rep can do is escalate the issue to the roadside assistance team, who eventually arrive and drive Kevin to his next stop. These recent examples of Waymo's software in action underscore the principled limitations of driving software I've discussed in my podcast. Self-driving cars don't perceive the world as humans do. They can't interact with other road users, and they lack common sense and judgment. With these limitations, it is no surprise that robotaxis don't drive well and cause all kinds of problems on the road, even if the actual accidents rate is similar to a Lyft and Uber driver. And to me, the pressing question is, why do we need or want autonomous vehicles? The argument the industry puts forth is always safety. But nobody can argue that autonomous vehicles are safer than the combination of driving software and the human driver. Keeping humans in the loop is clearly a safer solution, as there are many times when an understanding of the real world and using common sense and judgment should impact driving decisions. In all of the examples I showed, it is obvious that Kevin would have known what to do. People are able to judge that the self-driving car is not handling a situation well and would take over control and could drive the car out of trouble. The notion promoted by the self-driving car industry that the software must drive exclusively because people are such terrible drivers is just ridiculous. So allowing software with all its principled limitations to drive a car without human supervision remains a really bad idea. Now, when I suggest that there should be a human in the loop, this should not be seen as an endorsement of Tesla and its FSD software, because Tesla, for now, does require the driver to supervise FSD driving and take over when there is trouble. Because in practice, monitoring driving software often leads to really bad driving. Here is an incident from a recent drive by Chris from Dirty Tesla in Ann Arbor.
Really nice. Is everybody parking here right now? What is going on? Wow, FSD handled that beautifully. Really nice. And then this is a no turn on red. And you know what? I hate to say this so bluntly, but I'm pretty sure that Ann Arbor's no turn on reds were at. Okay, well, nope. There's another disengagement for you. This is a no turn on red. So it's illegal to turn right when the light is red. I know that's hard to understand.
Apparently, FSD can't read signs, or at least not always. Chris is responsible enough to not let the car make such an illegal maneuver and takes over, but not everyone is responsible like him. Here are two men who are testing FSD, and they let the car make a left turn where that is not allowed.
Now it's going to try to do a left turn on a right turn only.
Oh my god. Is it going to do it?
Does it know there's curbs there?
There's curbs? Yeah.
It's going to try, I think.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, watch the curve on your left side so it doesn't clip it.
Okay, there's a truck coming.
Stop. Oh, it's just, no, it's in the middle. We're just stopped in the middle of the actual. Like, go.
Okay, I am pressing the accelerator pedal right now.
Oh my gosh.
Not only does the car make a left turn where it isn't allowed, it also does not go quick enough given the oncoming traffic, and the driver steps on the accelerator to get out of the way. It is baffling that Tesla is allowed to put such flawed software in the hands of its customers, tempting them to experiment like this. The problem with having software drive vehicles and letting the human monitor the software is that even when you are paying attention, you may not be able to take over on time when you are not actually driving yourself. Here is another Tesla tester, Black Tesla, who was testing the new software on the highways in New Jersey. During most of the drive, he is full of praise for FSD. It is so smooth, it makes good decisions, etc., etc. But when the car goes off the highway, it makes two errors in quick succession.
50 miles an hour, you see it go to 45. So now it switches over to the standard profile. And it's in the wrong lane, so that's not great. It needs to be on the outer lane here, like this car is doing right here. Same situation, kind of silly. Can we go, please? So human did the wrong thing, FSD did the wrong thing, we both did the wrong thing.
Note how the driver does not correct the error, but also that he would not have made this mistake himself. He perfectly knows that FSD is in the wrong lane. But because he is letting the FSD drive him, he is in a wait and see mode and not capable of taking over with every mistake. Take this moment on the highway from earlier in the video.
Even though, again, we're going to the flow of traffic, even though it exceeds the speed limit. This guy's gonna do something wild. Good job keeping composure. Abrupt slow down, good job, good job. Whoa, car behind me skidding. Bad situation, good way to handle it.
First, note how Black Tesla can see that the other driver is going to do something wild. He can see that the accelerating BMW will be coming into his lane. He compliments FSD on a good job keeping its composure, by which I think he means that it was good that FSD did not slam on the brake when the BMW entered its lane. But the software does not adjust its driving to the wild driver at all. It just maintains the same speed, probably because the BMW is going faster than it. But precisely because the BMW had to accelerate to cut into the left lane, it is totally predictable that it would have to slow down soon. So if FSD were a defensive and safe driver, it would have anticipated this and started to slow down, widening the gap between it and the wild driver. And it would have expected the BMW to brake. But when the brake lights actually come on, it takes 4 seconds before the Tesla starts braking. And as a consequence of braking so late, it has to brake really hard, not gradually, as you can hear from Tesla's commentary. That surprises the car behind him, which has to brake so hard that they skid. Black Tesla praises FSD for how it handled the situation, but I am convinced that Black Tesla himself would have handled it much better. After all, he was able to classify this driver as a wild one. FSD had no such idea. Tesla FSD is not making our roads, or even the drivers in the Teslas, any safer, as these examples show. According to NHTSA, Tesla's Model Y, one of the best-selling cars in the US, and its Model S are near the top of the list of cars with the most fatal crashes of any car model. And that is despite all of the safety features Teslas are equipped with. There can be little doubt that FSD is to blame for these fatal crashes because it invites people not to drive, and that inevitably means that people stop paying attention to the road, and this prevents them from taking over in a timely manner when FSD makes inevitable mistakes. The problem with monitoring flawed driving software is that it is super stressful to pay such close attention that you can take over at any time. And thus people instead choose to relax and trust the software and let it drive. They do so at their own and at other road users' peril. We need common sense regulation that forces the car industry to adopt an approach to driving software that truly makes our roads safer. Human drivers must make driving decisions and be in charge of their vehicles, not software. Software can be a very useful backup safety driver. Unfortunately, most car companies believe that developing self-driving software is a necessity to remain competitive, and believe that more capabilities are better than fewer. For example, Mercedes has a level 3 automation that can drive on the highway at lower speeds and allows the driver not to pay attention at all. But it is performing very poorly, as was to be expected. The car industry will not regulate itself. And with Elon Musk part of the government, I think the chances that the US will adopt common sense regulations are slim. That is a real shame, and I hope that the rest of the world can chart a safer course. In my view, that can only succeed if we counter the propaganda language of the AI community. Artificial intelligence is not the same as human intelligence. Computer vision is not the same as being able to see. Running a program is not the same as making decisions in the moment. A computer does not have common sense or consciousness. Especially, computers are not social beings, and it is humans' essential social nature that is indispensable for safety on our roads.